pa rin ang nagwagi. Mula sa kanluran kung saan lulubog ang araw, huhubog ng umagang sa silangan matatanaw. Kahit saan ang hangganan, tatak ng Pilipino laging nandyan. Sa kahapon at kinabukasan, anumang bahagi ng kasaysayan, tatak ng PINOY, Pilipino ay nandyan. Alay ng pusong magiliw, salubungin kang nakangiti. Ang kahit na sinong lumapit, kayo'y aming mga kapatid. Mula sa hilaga hanggang timog ay umukit ng pag-asang liliwanag ang kinang sa gitna ng dilim. Kahit saan ang hangganan, tatak ng Pilipino laging nandyan. Sa kahapon at kinabukasan, anumang bahagi ng kasaysayan, tatak ng PINOY, Pilipino ay ibunyag, ipagsigawan, ipagdiwang tayo'y umabit na. Kahit saan mang hangganan, tatak ng Pilipino laging nandyan. Sa kahapon at kinabukasan, anumang bahagi ng kasaysayan, tatak ng PINOY, Pilipino ay nandyan. Pilipino laging nandyan. Pilipino, bahagi ng kasaysayan, tatak ng PINOY, Pilipino ay, PINOY, Pilipino ay, PINOY, Pilipino ay
Hinati sa tatlong dako, binubuo ng mahigit 7,000 pulo. Yan ang bayan ko. Kay umanggi ang kulay namin, likas na masayahin at san man makarating. Kapansin-pansin ang galing, ngunit kahit may samot-saring sari-sariling pinaniniwalaan, ngunit kahit may samot-saring lingwaheng hindi ko na naiintindihan, tayo ay isa sa puso't diwa, hinding-hindi magigiba. Taas too kahit kanino, ang lahi ko ay Pilipino. Halina't kilalanin ang lahing di pa buhay ay matibay. Walang ibang nais kundi ay ang magtagumpay sa patintero ng buhay. Ngunit kahit may samot-saring sari-sariling pinaniniwalaan, ngunit kahit may samot-saring nauusong ating kinahihiligan, tayo ay iisa sa puso't diwa, hinding-hindi magigiba. Taas noo kahit kanino, ang lahi ko ay Pilipino. Halina't kilalanin ang lahing di pa aapininuman, binabagyo man lagi, magsisimulang muli. Kaysayang isipin na patungo tayo sa kaunlaran, kahit samot sa hari ay mananatiling iisa, 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 iisa. Ngunit kahit may samot-saring sari-sariling pinaniniwalaan, ngunit kahit may samot-saring hidwa ang kailan pa kaya matutultukan, tayo ay isa sa puso't diwa, hindi magigiba. Taas noo kahit kanino, ang lahi ko ay Pilipino. Halina't kilalanin ang laging di pa aapininuman, binabagyo man lagi, magsisimulang muli. Kaysayang isipin na patungo tayo sa kaunlaran, kahit samot sa hari ay mananatiling iisa.
In the last 500 years, Filipinos have fought for freedom, unity, and equality. We have made our mark in many fields, from science and medicine to culture and the arts. We are beacons of creativity, resourcefulness, resiliency, and compassion. In 2021, the Filipino people will join the world in commemorating one of the greatest achievements of mankind, the first circumnavigation of the world. We celebrate this historic achievement by bannering an important message. Over adversity and struggles, we shall triumph, putting humanity first, always.
Isang mapagpalat makasisayang araw sa lahat. I'm Juvelyn Yerves, history researcher too from the National Historical Commission of the Philippines and a member of the National Quincentennial Committee Secretariat. Welcome to the Countdown to 500 online lectures, a special program brought to you by the Office of the President of the Philippines and the National Quincentennial Committee in anticipation of the 2021 Quincentennial commemorations in the Philippines. This is a series of online lectures which aims to sustain the Filipinos' interest to the 500th anniversary of the victory at Mactan, the Philippine part in the first circumnavigation of the world, and other related events in 2021 in this time of COVID-19 pandemic. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng sumusubaybay ngayon, gayon din sa mga katuwang na ahensya na kaagapay namin upang maisakatuparan ang programang ito. Ang National Historical Commission of the Philippines, Presidential Communications Operations Office, Radio Television Malacanang, Department of Foreign Affairs, and Department of Education. We are live via Facebook pages of National Quincentennial Committee, NHCP, PCOO, RTVM, NCCA, DFA, and DepEd. Please don't forget to share this live stream to your friends and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/NQC2021. Follow at NQC2021 on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Quincentennial Committee, for more educational materials. Follow also our playlist on Spotify 500 Years Philippines, to access the official soundtrack of the Quincentennial commemorations. Kasama ko rin po ngayong araw na ito ang isa sa aking mga kasamahan sa NQC Secretariat na si Binibining Ayesha Saysay. Hello, Ayesha.
Maraming salamat, Zoops, at magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Ilan lamang pong paalala, maaari niyo pong gamitin ang Quincentennial Online Lecture Portal sa panonood ng lecture na ito. So mapapanood niyo rin po sa nasabing portal ang lahat ng NQC lectures at lectures ng iba pang institutions na partners natin. Maaari din po kayong maka-generate ng e-certificate doon. So kailangan nyo lang pong mag-sign up sa portal.nqc.gov.ph at tumutok sa live stream ng lecture na ito sa nasabing portal. Again, mag-register po tayo sa portal.nqc.gov.ph sa mga gustong makakuha ng e-certificate. Ang ating pong lecture ngayon ay pang-12 ng Countdown to 500 online lecture. So balikan lang po natin ano-ano nga ba yung mga nangyari sa mga unang lectures. Noong June 12, naganap po ang ating unang lecture kung saan tinalakay ni Dr. Vic Torres ng De La Salle University kung papaano naging isa sa inspirasyon si Lapu-Lapu at ang Mactan ng panahon ni Mabini para lumaya sa mga Kastila. Sa ikalawang lektura naman ni Dr. Kirby Alvarez ng UP Diliman, tinalakay naman niya kung papaano binawi ni Rizal at ng kanyang henerasyon ang alaala na mayroon tayo tungkol sa ating mga ninuno. So sa ikatlong lektura naman po ni Dr. April Hope Castro, tinalakay ang papel ng Pilipinas sa pagpapaninga sa apoy ng kalayaan sa Asia, na para kay Mabini, ito ang liwanag na dapat tamhin ng mga kalahi natin upang bumangon at maibalik ang matandang kalayaan. Sa ika-4 na lektura naman ni Dr. Rolando Borinaga, tinalakay ang mga posibleng pagkain na kinain ni Magellan habang sila ay nasa Kabisayaan 500 years ago. Sa ika-5 lektura naman ni Prof. Van Ibiernas ay tinalakay ang ating mga ninuno at ang kalakalang pandaigdig bago dumating ang mga Espanyol. Sa ika-6 na lektura naman ay tinalakay ni Dr. Ricardo Jose kung papaano tinulungan ng Pilipinas sa pamamagitan ni Pangulong Manuel Quezon ang mga Hudyo noong panahon ng ikalawang digmaang pandaigdig. So dito pinakita rin kung gaano ka-compassionate talaga yung mga Pilipino. Sa atin namang ika-7 lektura ay tinalakay naman ni Mr. Ian Alfonso ang huling Spanish Governor General. Sa ika-8 naman ay itinalakay ni Prof. Hani Badilles kung paano nabuhay ang sanduguan o blood compact sa sadyandi o prosesong pangkapayapaan ng lumad sa Sarangani. Ang ika-9 na lecture naman po ni Mr. Taj Vitales ay patungkol naman sa mga sinaunang aspin sa Pilipinas. Sa atin naman pong ika-10 lecture ay nakapanayam natin ang cluster representatives ng NHCP Museums at ipinakilala sa atin ang mga history museums under the Commission. Sa ika-11 lecture naman po ay tinalakay ni Dr. Nelo Florendo ang kahalagahan ng paggamit ng periodisasyon sa pagbubuo ng kasaysayan ng Cordillera. Ang ating pong lecture ngayon ay patungkol sa Philippine boats at kung paano nito sinasalamin ng ating maritime history at traditions. Kung sakali po na habang nagtatalakay ang ating resource speaker for today at nagkaroon po kayo ng mga katanungan, feel free po to ask questions. Para po sa mga nasa Zoom, itype nyo lang po yung questions nyo po sa Q&A portion po nitong ating Zoom. Tapos para naman po sa mga nanonood via live stream sa Facebook, itype nyo lang po yung questions nyo sa aming comment section. Okay, narito po muli si Ms. Jubes para ipakilala ang ating lecture speaker for today. Jubes?
Okay, maraming salamat, Ayesha. So our research speaker for today is a professor of history at the Department of History in the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, University of the Philippines, Diliman. She served as chair of the Department of History from 2012 to 2017 and as Dean of the College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, UP Diliman, from 2017 till today, until present. She obtained her BA in History from St. Scholastica's College, Manila, MA in History and PhD in Philippine Studies from UP Diliman. Her research field is on cultural history with a focus on indigenous Philippine society and culture, the belief system, and religion. She was a project leader of the Sama boat building technology and conducted field research among the Sama-Tausug boat builders in Sibuto and Bongao Islands in Tawi-Tawi, and was the sole Philippine contributor to the Paris-based international project, Oceanides, which produced a 4-volume work on the role of the sea in history. She is co-author and co-editor of history textbook Kasaysayang Bayan and served as president of the Adhika ng Pilipinas, a professional organization for historians and history teachers. Everyone, let's welcome Dr. Maria Bernadette Abrera.
Okay.
Oh, ma'am, pwede na po
Hi,
kayo.
thank you, Ms. Nieves. Okay, thank you, Ms. Nieves, and good morning to everyone. Thank you to the NHCP for the invitation to give a lecture as part of the series of the quincentennial commemoration in the Philippines. This presentation will focus on the encounter between the colonials and the Filipinos, focused on boats. This encounter will be studied from the perspective of Philippine maritime culture and traditions as recorded in the early colonial records. So therefore, primarily, the presentation from a historical methodology point of view will be taken from the word lists, the vocabularies, and the dictionaries, and the kinds of boats that were recorded there. Primarily, it is from the Tagalog compilation of San Antonio in 1624, the Manila Codex, corroborated with the Noceda y Sanlúcar in 1860. The Visayan references will be taken from Mentrida, for it's the earliest grammar on Hiligaynon. And also, of course, from Francisco Alsina in 1668. There will also be the use of other compilations of Bicol, Ilocano, and Maguindanaon vocabularies. However, because it is from the approach of a historical cultural perspective, it will be, these records of the Philippine boats will be taken together with a deeper understanding of Philippine culture, so that connections and references will be made to folklore, religious rituals, and ethnographic data. So primarily, aside from showing the boats that were observed and seen and recorded by primarily the missionaries, this approach will also enable us to see the extent and the depth of our own culture. Okay. Okay. Let me share. Sige. Okay. The most common and the general term for boats was bangka. So it was defined in 1624 as a term for all forms of small watercraft. Although by the 18th century, it referred to all kinds of boats among the Tagalog. Bangka is a basic Austronesian term that refers to a water vessel. So there are two kinds of bangka depending on the construction of the boat. These are the binilog and the tinimbaw. So the binilog, as you can see, the binilog is a boat that is made from a single piece of log. In this illustration in the 19th century, you will see that the bangka here is not actually a small kind of boat because it is classified as a bangka because it is made from a single piece of log. Once the boat is added with planks, it becomes a tinimbaw. Okay, so we cannot say that there is a particular size or length for the bangka or the binilog because that would depend on the log that the boat builder will make. Okay, so the boat that we will show here. Okay, the kinds of boats in the Visayas recorded in the 17th century by Alcina. The Visayas calls the common boat as the small boat as the baloto. And you will find the baloto on the topmost part of this illustration from Alcina. I'm sure you are familiar with this illustration. And he identifies several other kinds of boats. Okay. So the illustration shows a third small boat that is labeled Baloto Menor. Okay. You will find it here on the left side of the screen. And it has a sail. Yes?
Ma'am Det, excuse me po. Nawala po yata yung screen share niyo po.
Hindi nakikita?
Hindi po, ma'am. Pa-share na lang po ng screen.
Sandali ha.
Sige po. Thank you, ma'am.
Ito nakikita na?
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay.
Ano na lang po, yung preview po, pa-slideshow na lang po, ma'am. Thank you po.
Ito nakikita? Okay. Nakikita yes, na ito, Ayesha?
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay, sige. Ito yung illustration ng mga bangka. 19th century illustration yan from the Museo Naval. So ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. The bangka is not actually a small boat. in this illustration, but it is classified as a bilog because here in this illustration shows that it is made from only one piece of log. Therefore, because of its construction, it is under the category of binilog. Once this bangka is added with planks, then it becomes a tinimbao. Okay, because the root word of tinimbao is timbao, which is made from planks. And this is Alcina's 1668 illustration of Philippine boats in the Visayas. And bangka would be called baloto in the Visayas. Okay. And there is a baloto menor, although that baloto still has a sail. There is a smaller boat on the upper right side of the illustration that is not identified, and that could be the smaller kind of bilog. Okay. We will be referring to the other kinds, these other kinds of boats, but it is important for us to note that the Visayas has the huanga o buanga, and there are flags flying in the buanga. Okay. Alcina has identified the smallest kind of boat on the lower right portion as rambo o corelan. However, this term does not appear in other vocabularies. In Mentrida, it is not recorded, rambo or corelan. Okay, so it shows the versatility of the baroto and the adaptability to various needs. The basic form was a single piece of log, which the Visayans called damlog. Okay. If the bark of a tree were added to its sides, then it became the bilos or bilog. And if added with planks, it became the timbao. Okay. And this would be the planks or the leaves of the coconut were added to the sides to increase the freeboard. For example, if it were going to carry several kavans of rice. Okay. Any kind of wood could be fashioned into a baloto. Okay. Sige. So this is still from Alcina. That is a detail from another illustration. And we can see here the small kind of baloto, which could be the equivalent to the small bangka. Okay. Any kind of wood could be fashioned into a baloto. In fact, it was so ordinary. Okay, so these are the pre-colonial ads that could have fashioned the Philippine boats. This one is already made from iron. It's still in use up to the present among the Sama and Tausug in Tawi-Tawi. Okay, this is the illustration of the making of a baloto with a stone or a shell adze, and the instruments are called dalag or the bintong in the Visayas. This baloto was so common and so ordinary because it could be fashioned from any kind of wood. So that during the colonial period, when they introduced a certain kind of bread, it was called binaloto because of its shape. That bread is now what we call pandesal. So therefore, the original shape of the pandesal is likened to the baloto. Therefore, it was originally binaloto. Okay, so the carrying capacity of this baloto could be increased depending on if you added to the sides. If it could have been the bark of a tree, which was called opak, or it could have been coconut leaves. If it were coconut leaves, it would be called dalopi. Okay, this is an illustration in the 17th century of Manila Bay. It shows on the foreground 4 kinds of indigenous Philippine boats. And based on the description from the dictionaries and the illustrations that are comparable to these boats, I have identified them as the adyong, here, the bangka, the birok, and the pangko. Okay. There is another kind of boat that was particular to the transportation between Manila and Cavite, and that was called the Gilalo. So parang kung ngayon, parang jeep siya, ano? Kasi yun lang ang ruta niya, Manila, Cavite. So this one is in the 17th century. It is noteworthy that if you look at other illustrations by foreigners in the 18th and the 19th century, the indigenous boats, the Philippine boats, would no longer be prominent. In fact, in the Murillo Velarde map by the 18th century, the indigenous boats would only be found, there would be found in the Visayas and then in Mindanao. In the Luzon area, what was illustrated there would primarily be foreign boats. Okay, there's also a pangko. Pangko was either for transportation or for commerce. And actually, there is a term for the commercial use of the boats. The term is naglalako. Naglalako is to sell merchandise from town to town in a boat. Okay, so that would be the original meaning. Okay, the Maguindanaons also added nipa leaves around the planks of a salisipan in order to increase the freeboard. In this is an illustration of the salisipan in the 19th century. So it's the date here by Monleon is 1890. But the salisipan here is identified as a warship used as embarcación de guerra y piratería. So it is a ship for war and piracy. And it is found in the Philippine archipelago and in Jolo. Okay. And what is remarkable here would be the prow and the stern. The front and the back part of the boat. The salisipan was described as long and narrow with numerous carvings of uncommon beauty. What is distinct about this 19th century salisipan is the prow with intricate okier. A foreigner in 1920 described it as the bifid form of stem and stern. We will be discussing this later, what the bifid form actually means to our culture. In Maguindanao, the boats were generically called awang, the equivalent term for bangka. Okay. In the 18th century, Thomas Forrest noted the large boats called, he had three kinds, uwang masala, and the small boat called uwang pedu. And the warships were called uwang mangayaw. In the Museo Naval illustration, the Spanish label for this boat is Pangko Malayo de Guerra, but this would be equivalent to Forrest's uwang mangayaw, because the guerra is pangangayaw. The Visayas also had a mangayaw as a boat, and according to Elsina, it used up the most number and the biggest logs, owing to the number of raids and wars. Mentrida had also recorded the term mangayaw under its root word ayaw. Pangangayaw, in an earlier study by Rodriguez, pointed out that Alsina classified two methods of warfare or pangungubat. Warfare carried out on land was pagahat, and warfare conducted on sea was pangangayaw. Okay. So you will see that this boat, as the uwang mangayaw, it has lantakas or the cannons. Okay. It has cannons not only on the prow, on the stern, but also at its side. So this is really a ship of for warfare. The strategy for pangangayaw or war at sea was primarily bangga. Okay. Aside from using the cannons or the lantaka, the strategy was primarily bangga. In Ilocano, it was called agbangga-banggada. Bangga is found also in the Visayas as a term, and it was described as the act of ramming one's boat against the enemy ship, either to break it or to capsize it. So therefore, bangga was intentional. And it was different from a sudden, unexpected encounter with another boat. And in order to ram it, this unexpected encounter was not called bangga, but it was called sumpong. Okay, so you were going on a pangangayaw, you did not expect that there would be boat that was vigilant enough on the lookout, so that was sumpong. But in a confrontation and in an intentional war, it was bangga. The mere act of facing off another boat was already called bangga, since boats usually face the same direction. Okay. So this is a buanga or a huanga. You can see here that there are also lantakas or cannons at the front, at the prow, or at the stem or the rear end of the boat. The mere fact of facing off another boat was already called bangga, since boats had to sail in the same direction. So therefore, if houses were built facing each other and the doors faced each other, or the stairs of the houses faced each other, they were opposite each other, it was also said that the houses were on bangga with each other. Nagabangga ang ila mga balay. And meaning to say, it was not a good thing. It was not a good omen because it could augur conflict. Bangga is the opposite of another term applied to boats, which is abay. And abay is found in Tagalog, Bicol, and Bisaya. Abay means to accompany another boat or to go together. It is the group of boats sailing together. In 17th century Bicol, abay was to put a boat side by side with another or to accompany a coffin or a corpse. Therefore, ang pag-abay was also to accompany the dead person in a funeral procession. Okay. So this funerary procession implied the accompaniment, so it was abay. And here we will see that primarily there was a ritual among the Sama that the burial would take place in another island, and therefore they would go to that island in boats, and that would be the abay. The stature of a person who was to be buried would be seen by the number of boats in the abay or in the funerary procession. Okay. So there is another meaning of abay in the Visayas. Mentrida records that abay refers to a particular spell. Parang mahika, hechizo, that accompanies a person to death. So therefore, the abay is not simply the act of accompanying another boat or accompanying a corpse for the burial, but it was also a spell. Ano yun sa Tagalog? It was a spell that accompanied a person to death. So it could give us a lead into understanding the practice of pagpag. Okay, so that one who had gone to the wake had to undergo pagpag in order that this accompaniment would not follow him to the house. So the essential meaning then of abay would be accompaniment, and the burial would be by boat. Okay. Now, we have here the balangay it was the first boat recorded by Pigafetta, a large boat, he said. And Morga described it as a straight and swift boat with a low freeboard. Okay. So San Antonio also called it a navio común, or a common boat in the islands. And there were two kinds of balangay. It was either a mangapat or a manganim, and it referred to the number of planks for seating that could be accommodated in the balangay. So you will see in this 19th century illustration, the top view, you would see the number of planks, three. That would be a manganim. So it could accommodate anywhere from 12 to 16 passengers. It had a rudder that could steer the direction, and a roof could be placed temporarily made of coconut leaves. It was called karang in order to protect the riders. Okay. So Combes in the mid-17th century praised he called it already the barangay, okay, as an excellent native boat used for seafarings. Seafaring. It was moved by paddles. It was very swift and light, and it had a thin prow. Okay. Alsina also praised it as a very light craft made of planks and rowed with oars. And the small oars were called bugsay, which had pointed ends. The balangay was also the reference for the boat builder. Among the Tagalog, the general term for a skilled craftsman was panday, and the material with which he worked specified his profession. A panday ginto was a goldsmith. A panday bakal was an ironsmith. And a panday balangay was a boat builder. So we are also aware of the excellent quality of cannons in Raha Soliman's Manila, the Lantakas, who were made by a person called Panday Pira. So Pira from Pilak, so a silversmith. And Panday Pira was excellent in his craft, but after the Battle of Bangkusay in 1571, he fled to Pampanga. But Legazpi, seeing the quality of the cannons made by Panday Pira, he summoned him back to Manila, and Panday Pira became the cannon maker of the Spanish army until his death in the 1590s. So it is worth noting here that warships had lantakas. I already pointed that out. They were placed at the prow and at the sides, and various panday would therefore be working together with the Panday Balangay in order to build warships for the ethnic states. In Panay, Mentrida recorded that the smaller balangay boats were called balo balangay. Okay. Balo balangay. And the town and the people under one head were called kabalangay. And the verb binabalangay meant dividing them into smaller units of balangay. Okay. In the Ilocos dictionary in the 19th century, there was a balangay that referred to the boat and a balangay that referred to the town. Okay. The barangay in this Ilocos dictionary was a general term for boats, while the barangay, which was spelled with a double G, indicated a specific number of tributes or families under the leadership of a person who was called the cabeza de barangay. So that's already the Spanish term. That would be the datu. The cabeza de barangay was responsible for the tax collection, and he gave instructions also for public works. The balangay was also the boat that was used for death rituals, in particular burial. So specifically, if the dead person had been a member of a raiding team, so he was a mangangayaw, the coffin that he would be buried in would be in the shape of a boat called balangay. Okay. Now, this is a 20th century picture of a wedding boat in Jolo, because we will note that these boats had several functions, and depending on the function, they were decorated for that kind of function. They were dressed up for the function it would be used. The general Tagalog term for dressing the boat was samno or samyo, which was to adorn a boat. To adorn a ship, to get a ship ready for pangayaw, to adorn it, it was also called bangga. Okay, so bangga would be different from the samno, which would be for celebrations. Okay, there was another Tagalog word that was a synonym of samno was pandasal. So it gives us a clue to the ritual that was involved when doing the samno or the bangga, the ritual of the dressing of a boat for a specific purpose. Usually small flags, in Tagalog, these small flags were called pandi-pandi. In Maguindanao, it was called pandi. These were the small flags decorated in the bangka. The Maranao epic Darangen tells us that pandi on the boat were multicolored. If the datu were going to court, he was going to look for a bride, or if there were a festive celebration. So this black and white photo, we can see that it would have been colorful. Pigafetta and his companions, when they left for Borneo, he recorded that they were met by the Sultan's boat, which had white and blue flags, and they were decorated all around with peacock feathers. So the samno could be made of cloth, or they could be made from the plumes of a bird. Now, the Sultan of Borneo, what made his parao remarkable was that the prow and the stern, the front and the rear end of the parao was covered in gold. Now, we do not have any record, any historical document saying that we had any ship that had gold at the prow or the stern. But the epic of the Ilocanos, Biag ni Lamang, tells us that when Lamang was already going to Kalanutian, the town of Ines Canoyan, in order to ask for her hand in marriage, then it was revealed that Lamang owned 2 golden balangay. And this golden balangay traded between the Ilocos and China. There is also here, this is a detail from the map of 1734, Murillo Velarde. It could be, because he did not identify them, so it could be a Huanga or a Pangko. Okay. And this one, this is a Boholano epic recorded by Alcina. It tells of a Datu Sumanga, and he was interested in the hand of Bugbong Humasanon. But then Bugbong Humasanon, from how we read the epic, she could have been a binokot because she was very coy and she was very demanding. The part of the demands for a dowry that she asked from the Datu was that he should go on a raid to Tandayag on the coast of Caraga and bring back 120 slaves. Then when he had done that, she said, go off to Yambig in Camiguin, bring back 220 slaves. May number talaga ha. And then the Datu did that. And then she said, no, another raid from Siquijor and Dapitan, bring back 120 slaves. And he did that again. And then she was not yet satisfied. Sabi niya, go to Mindanao and Jolo and bring back more than 220 slaves. And he did that. And then she said, go to China and fill the ship with slaves and other measures of wealth. And so finally, si Datu Sumanga became exasperated, and she sent her a threat, a warning, na kapag hindi mo pa binigay sa akin yung mga buyo, so yung betel nut, the betel nut in our culture, it constituted the response of a lady, of a maiden to a suitor. So he said, unless you give me the buyos, which had already made him so tired, he would personally remove her hairpiece, okay, and make this is not a symbol, but a sumbol. The sumbol is the plume for his ship. So when the maiden heard this message, she began to cry, and then she finally made the buyos to be sent to Datu Sumanga. So here, what is important is not only the reference to China, but also the samno or the sumbol for the ship. So if in Borneo it was of peacock feathers, the Datu here was threatening to make it of human hair from the binokot. Okay. Now, one very significant adornment on the prow was called naga by the Tagalogs. And among the Ilocanos, it was called binubuaya. The Sanskrit term naga referred to a serpent, but the Tagalog naga, according to San Antonio, was the head of a crocodile that was placed on the prow of the bangka. The crocodile motif in the boat is seen in this illustration of the Salisipan. Okay, so the crocodile motif is at the front of the boat. That refers to the open mouth of a crocodile, which was to the English observer in the 20th century. He simply called it in its technical term a bifid design. So ibig sabihin dalawa. It was two-pronged, bifid design. But in Philippine and Austronesian culture, that is the crocodile motif. Okay. So the prow of the Salisipan was designed for bangga. And therefore, it had to be made, this prow had to be carved from the strongest hardwood because it was intended to ram an enemy boat. As a matter of fact, in the Maranao, it is the Maranao epic that records the names of the boats. Therefore, the boats had names. And the name of the boat of a particular Datu was, the translation was a crocodile eating the enemy. So that means that the reference to a crocodile is still part of the name of the boat. So therefore, the crocodile motif really shows us the significance of that design. Okay. We are familiar with this naga, okay, because of the Karakoa illustration. This illustration show refers to the Korakora or the Karakoa as a Huanga. So this one is from Banda. So, and it is a warship showing the raiding team. Okay. The Karakoa in Southeast Asia had a prow that was of the naga, and the stern was the tail. So you will see here that probably the illustrator did not actually see the boat. It was described to him, but in essence, the illustration is correct because it has the head of a naga or the serpent, and at its end was the tail. We will also find references to the bugsay or the bugsay as at the tail of the naga. Okay, so we find here then the particular design has a meaning to our culture. Okay, so this is still from Murillo A. Velarde's map, and the Karakoa, that is the only indigenous, is the only Philippine ship that is recorded, that is identified by name in this map. The other ships near Mindanao, which is called the Moro Gulf, they are not labeled, but the Karakoa in particular is labeled, and there are two of them, and they are found in the Visayas within Panay Island. So one is in the north of Panay, and the other is in the south of Panay. Okay, so this is a Vinta that is also found in southern Philippines. You will see here that the bow and the prow and the stern have that bifid form. Okay, and we look at that crocodile motif because it is found in the other artifacts that we have, particularly in relation to coffins and burial. So this is a crocodile motif on the lid of a boat coffin. Okay. The crocodile prow is found in the lipa of the Sama in Tawi-Tawi. Okay. This is a sunduk, which is a graveyard marker. It is carved from wood. It also carries that crocodile design. Okay. And the panolong in this illustration from a house constructed in 1920, the panolong, which is placed at the prow of a boat, is placed in the house of a datu called the Torogan. It is only the house of the datu which is called the Torogan that carries that panolong, because the panolong signifies power and strength. Okay. Now this one is an illustration from the Darangen, because the hero in the Darangen was given a ship, the Rinamentaw Mapalaw. He was given a ship when he was born, and that ship was carried a tonong or a guardian spirit. The tonong was a guardian spirit for the datu, but it also guarded the ship of the datu, and this guardian spirit could transform itself depending on where the datu went. If the datu was at sea, it would be a boat. If the datu was on land, the tonong guarding that boat would be a crocodile. And if the tono was on air, it would be in the form of a bird. Okay. So here we will find the stone burial lid, circa 1400. And in that burial lid is also an illustration of a person holding a crocodile. And so we will remember here the references that when the Tagalogs had any form of illness, they would ride a balangay and then they would throw down offerings of food and clothing to the crocodile whom they called the nono. Okay, so these references would then have to be woven into a narrative in order for us to realize the depth of the maritime culture and the traditions that we have and that we can see that have been recorded primarily in the colonial records, but which we have to supply with the understanding from our own culture in order for us to see the depth and the extent of our maritime cultural heritage. Okay, so I will end here, and you may ask for some clarifications in order for us to have a discussion. Okay, thank you.
Ayan po, maraming salamat po, Dr. Abrera. Pero bago tayo tumungo sa question and answer portion, so dumako po muna tayo sa shout out. Yan. So, binabati po namin lahat ng taga-subaybay po natin ngayon mula naman po dito sa Facebook page ng NQC. Hello kay G. Rojas, NHCP din. Kay Mark Anthony Glorioso po na curator po ng Museo ni Robredo. Yan. Kay Junju Nagbayani, kay Gerald Santos, kay Aaron Viernes po ng Departamento ng Kasaysayan. Yan. Kay Ma'am Lou De Leon ng Departamento ng Kasaysayan din. Kay Jerwil, kay Ma'am Nelita Mabini, at marami pa pong iba. Dito naman po sa Facebook page naman po ng DepEd, nakakatuwa po na ang maraming nagko-comment po mula sa Mindanao area. So like, ito po, meron po tayo from Division of Sarangani. Hello po, Sir Danilo Alonton, watching from New Canaan Integrated School, Alabel, District 1. Yan po kay Nora Arevir Onatsak, kay Mistes Nasoli Talino, from Sarangani din, kay Ma'am Ann Maluyo from Kidapawan City, to kay Mr. Johnny Naranha from Urdaneta City Division, Lamis Arlene from SDO Bacolod City. Yan, meron tayo from Sultan Kudarat Division. Hi po, Ma'am Ani Casero. Yan, at marami pa pong iba. Yan, sobrang dami po ng mga gurong nanonood po mula sa DepEd. Yan, binabati ko rin po sila Patrick John Mansueto, ay kay castmate Aljon Conciliado, yan, kay Bugan Munoz, Miss Leslie Rivera Corpus, Marie Gonzaludo Castillo, at marami pa pong iba. Yon. Yesha, may gusto ko pa bang batiin?
Gusto ko rin batiin yung lahat ng mga participants natin sa Zoom. Huwag po kayong magsasawa na laging umattend sa lectures po namin. Ayan, siguro, Zeus, pwede na nating iba to kay Ma'am Det yung mga questions for today.
Ayan po, Ma'am Abrera. Meron po tayong tanong from Ma'am Lu De Leon. Po. Saan po kinukuha ang mga kahoy na ginagamit sa paggawa ng bangka? Kasi walang malawak na kagubatan ng mga isla ng Sulu at Tawi-Tawi.
Oo. Kung Sulu and Tawi-Tawi, Borneo ang nagsusupply dyan. Hanggang ngayon, Borneo ang nagsusupply. Pero yung sa Luzon, dito na siya sa Luzon kukunin. Actually, yung mga boat builders, yung mga shipyards ay nasa Cavite at saka nasa Samar. Kaya nga makikita natin na hindi ba yung nung gustong ilipat yung mga boat builders from Samar to Cavite, nagkaroon ng revolt. Yun, so tama po yun, Ma'am Lou, pero meron ding binabanggit noong fieldwork sa Tawi-Tawi, meron ding binabanggit na dati meron pang mga kahoy sa Tawi-Tawi mismo na doon nila sinosource yung kahoy para sa kanilang mga kumpit. Pero ngayong 20th century, wala nang kahoy. Wala na silang nakukuha. So Borneo na 'yon.
So maraming salamat po, Ma'am Det. So meron pa pong nakalinyang dalawang question po dito. Yung isa po mula kay Jovi Miroy ng Ateneo de Manila. So ang tanong niya po, were the boats used for fishing different?
For fishing?
Opo, different po. Opo. Magkaiba po ba yung ginagamit na boat sa pangingisda?
Sa pangingisda.
Opo.
Okay. Merong yung mga common na pangingisda, pare-pareho din lang yon. Yung mga bangka, yung either yung malaking bangka o maliliit, meron siyang gamit as fishing boats. Pero merong particular kind of boat. Kasi may net na yon. I forgot kasi hindi ko nilagay yung illustration na yon. Pero merong particular kind of boat na may fishing net na naka-built in doon sa boat na yon. So yung fishing na yon, ibig sabihin hindi siya para sa laot, kung hindi dito lang sa malalapit na dagat. So kasi nga naroroon na yung net niya. So yun lang ang natatandaan ko na isang particular boat for fishing. But otherwise, yung bangka ay ginagamit din sa pangingisda.
Thank you po, ma'am. Next question naman po mula kay Ian Alfonso po. Yan. Ano-ano pong puno ang kadalasang ginagamit sa paggawa ng mga bangka noon? At basta-basta na lang po ba ang pagtotroso noon para gumawa ng bangka?
Hindi. Hindi. Ang natatandaan ko ngayon, Ian, kasi ibang ano ko yun ginawa, yung kinds of boats. Yung hardwood talaga, yung dongon. Pero para sa ano lang yon, only for prow. Pagkatapos, there would be particular kinds of wood na para doon sa timbaw at saka para doon sa mga tapi, doon sa bahi. Yung bahi ay yung yung pako na kahoy. Iba-iba ang kahoy na yon. Kaya may mga suppliers sila ng iba't ibang klase ng kahoy na yon. Ngayon, hindi maaaring kumuha ng kahoy ng basta-basta lang. Doon sa sa colonial period, dahil nagmamadali yung mga Espanyol, kailangan gumawa na ng mga warships at saka ng for protection sa kanila, kasi andyan na yung mga Dutch, nagre-raid na sa kanila, andyan yung mga British, sinusundan sila. So nagmamadali sila, they could not wait. But yung traditional na boat building, you had to wait for the new moon. Kailangan, bakit new moon? Kasi sa new moon, yung buwan ay rin siya, naka-shape siya ng nakahugis bangka ang new moon. Sa Bicol, ang tawag doon tagimata. Yung new moon the face of that moon is tagimata. Parang gigising pa lang, ano? So yung new moon, that is when you cut the boat. You cut the tree for the boat. Dahil nga iaano mo siya. Ang hinahabol mo doon sa in folklore, ang habol mo doon ay meron ding dagat, meron ding ilog na nasa langit. At ang buwan ay siya yung bangka doon sa langit. Siya yung naglalayag doon sa langit. Kaya hahabulin mo yung panahon na yon, tsaka kakukuha ng kahoy. Kaya nga sasabihin nila, hindi ko maalala kung si Alcina ang nagsabi nito, pero sinabi niya na bakit yung mga sasakyan ng mga Pilipino napakatagal ng panahon hindi nasisira. Kasi yung mga sasakyan na yon niluluto ng husto yung kahoy. Parang hinihintay mo talaga na nasa wastong edad yung kahoy para gagawin mo siyang tinimbaw o plank doon sa boat. Samantalang yung mga Kastila, kasi nga nagmamadali sila because they needed it immediately. Later on, dito na sila gumagawa ng galyon. Dahil kailangan na nila yung boat kaagad ma-construct, hindi na sila naghihintay ng panahon. Gumagawa na kaagad sila. And therefore, within a year, masisira na yung mga bangka. Kailangan na nilang mag-replace ng mga parts, ng mga planks. Kaya nga yung mga galyon na tatawid ng Pacific, kailangan may kasama silang mga boat builders kasi magre-repair sila dahil baka masira na yung galyon na yon. Ano yung paghihintay na yon ng mga Tagalog, ng mga Pilipino? Hindi lang siya folklore, kung hindi, bahagi yon, kung pag-aaralan, bahagi yon ng katutubong kaalaman. Kasi you cannot construct the boat from a fresh plank. Dahil yung moisture content noon ay magdadala sa pagkakasira. Kailangan mababawasan mo siya. Sa Western boat building kasi may measurement sila ng moisture content. Ngayon, pag naghintay ang mga Pilipino ng ilang buwan bago nila gawin yung bangka, yung moisture content ng plank na yon would be the ideal for constructing a boat. Kaya nga tama yung parang tama sa panahon na naluto ng husto yung mga planks na ito. So naghihintay talaga. Kaya very particular ang skill ng mga panday balangay. Kaya nga may sinabi si Alcina na ang lalaki ng mga sweldo ng mga boat builders kaysa sa iba pang mga civil officials kasi yung skill nila because of that indigenous knowledge. Kaya nga maganda na ma-retrieve ang mga record na ito, ma-compare doon sa science ng boat building kasi it is comparable. At makikita natin na ito yung dahilan kung bakit mahuhusay at magagaan. Napakagaan ang description nila. Parang mga ibon na lumilipad na pag-iiwanan yung mga sasakyan ng mga Kastila.
Okay po, ma'am. Maraming salamat po sa napakagandang sagot na yun. Ito na po yung sa tingin kong last question for this lecture from Riona Bier po na nandito po sa loob ng ating webinar. Sa pangangayo po, kadalasan ba ay Kastila ang kalaban ng mga Pilipino o nagkakaroon din po ng instances na kapwa Pilipino ang nag-aagawan ng teritoryo? Yun po, ma'am.
Oo, kasi ang pangangayaw naman pre-colonial pa siya eh. So ibig sabihin, nangangayaw na talaga. May raiding na yung mga coastal states. Kasi hindi naman maaaring mangayaw yung isang ethnic state na walang capacity. Kasi in the first place, you have to have the organization. Kasi mag-assemble ka ng manpower, mag-assemble ka yung binanggit ni Dr. Bulinaw. Kailangan mo ng resources ng mga kahoy. Kailangan mo ng mga shipbuilders. So kailangan merong ng isang economic development in order for an ethnic state to engage in pangangayaw. Okay. Tapos yung pangangayaw ay napakaraming mga dahilan. Okay, maaaring kumuha ng mga esklabo, yung mga alipin, tapos pang ano din 'yon, parang ano for ransom. Talagang economic yung yung pangangayaw kasi i-ransom mo. Halimbawa, yung dumating dito yung mga Espanyol 1571, gusto na nilang puntahan ng Maynila from Panay. Tapos kailangan na basta may dumating sila yung galing sa Mindanao, pumunta sila dito sa lugar ng Visayas, tapos kumuha sila ng mga tao, tapos pumunta sila sa Maynila, pabalik sila sa Mindanao, rinansom nila yung mga hinuli nilang tao from the same coastal town. So ibig sabihin, it was simply an economic activity. They could also be raiding for brides. They could raid for harvest. Halimbawa, kinulang, they could raid for harvest. So yung pangangayaw was both an economic and a political activity in order to expand the influence of an ethnic state. So talagang part na ito, mapunta na tayo doon sa the creation of a national state, of a national community. Kasi nangangayaw na sila, nagre-raid na sila. So makikita natin na kaya nga binabanggit ni Alcina na they were always at war with each other. Kasi kailangan din nilang mag-defend ng sarili nilang mga lugar mula sa pangangayaw ng iba. Okay. So kaya yung Sulu, yung Sultanate ng Sulu ay hindi matalo-talo kasi nga ang huhusay ng mga boat builders doon sa Balangingi. Nung pumasok ang steamboat after the 1860s, pumasok ang steamboat, ang grenade talaga, ang sinalakay talaga ng mga Kastila ay yung Balangingi. Hindi naman sila dumiretso sa Sulu, sa Hulo. Balangingi. Kasi yung Balangingi, yung mga supplier ng mga boats. So nung na-break yon, linagay nila dito sa Isabela, yung mga sama na yon, di doon nila na-break yung economic power ng Sulu Sultanate.
Okay po, napaka-interesting po nung binahagi ni Dr. Abrera po dun sa sagot na binigay niya sa tanong kanina. Muli maraming salamat po Dr. Abrera at ngayon po ay inalatag ko na po ang hatag kay Binibining Ayesha para lagumin ang ating lektura sa araw na to.
Pero bago yan, Jobs, may humabol na isa pong question dito po sa ating Q&A portion. Ayan, last question na po ito, ma'am. Last na po talaga. Ayan, from Herald Giwa from UPLD. Magandang umaga po, Dr. Abrera. Itatanong ko lang po sana kung may nakikita po kayong pagpapatuloy ng mga ritual sa bangka, tulad ng pagbabasbas ng dugo sa iba pang uri ng transportasyon sa kasalukuyan gaya po ng mga bus. Ginagawa pa rin po kaya ang pag-aalay ng dugo sa mga itinatayong bahay na may kaugnayan din po sa bangka?
Okay. napaka lalim ng ritual na yon, Gerald, kasi may record tayo na ang paglunsad ng bangka, ano ito 16th century, paglunsad ng bangka, iro-roll nila yon sa mga logs, tapos ang last na maro-roll ay actually ay the slave. So parang yun ay blood offering. Blood offering na yon. So, kaya nga tinawag siya na isang nakakatakot na ritual. Kasi may buhay ng isang alipin na isa-sacrifice doon sa paglunsad ng bangka. Para yon sa pagpapatibay ng bangka. Ngayon, yung makikita ninyo, meron pang mga ritual na ganyan, pero hindi na pumapatay ng tao. Manok, manok na. Yung pelikula na Muroami na it was about that practice, yung diving ng mga bata ang ginagamit. Yung may movie na yon, Muroami, pero dun sa movie na yon, yung bangka doon, pinunasan nila yung prow, pinunasan nila ng dugo ng manok. Okay. Ngayon, meron ding nagbanggit sa akin na yung bago niyang kotse, bagong sasakyan. Ano na ito? Land transportation, hindi na ito dagat. Land transportation, yung bagong sasakyan, yung gulong na yon, sinabihan sila nung kanilang kasamahan sa bahay na dapat punasan muna ng dugo yung gulong bago iandar. So yung ganon. So ibig sabihin, if we look hard enough, meron pang traces ng ganyang mga ritual na matatagpuan kahit sa kasalukuyan nating lipunan. Kasi napakarami talaga, lalo na yung mga burial practices, napakarami niyan. Hanggang ngayon, ginagawa natin, hindi na natin alam kung bakit, pero yung animist belief ang magiging dahilan.
Thank you so much po, Ma'am Det. Meron na pong isang comment from Facebook. In Lingayen, Pangasinan, baloto is used to transport harvested bangus from the fish pond to a bagsakan market in Binmalay at the foot of Manat Bridge during the 1950. Ayan, comment po ni Ricardo Ramos. Ayan, so kahit po ako personally, nakakita rin po ako ng baloto sa Cebu nung pumunta po kami noong December dun sa welcome ng Balangay na ang head po ay si Yusek Art Valdez. Ayan, so ang takeaway...
Pero maganda sana kung makita na meron pa yung tinapay na binaloto kasi pandesal na tayo.
Opo. Ayan. Ang takeaway lessons ko po from this lecture, i-share ko lang po, ma'am. Ayan. So, meron po pala tayong iba-ibang klase ng mga bangka sa Philippines. So, hindi lang po pala siya isa. Hindi lang yung balangay, hindi lang yung karakuha. We have the adjong, bangka, birok, panko, baloto, salisipan, buanga, balangay, at yung iba po nating mga boats. At bukod po sa pangingisda, at saka pagsakay po for transportation, may iba-iba pa rin po palang gamit yung mga bangka during the pre-colonial Philippines. So, even nung dumating yung mga Espanyol. So, ilan po dito yung ginamit po sila as warship sa pangangayaw. At pangalawa, ginamit din po siya sa mga death procession. So, ang isa po sa nakuha ko pong lesson, pag po pala, depende sa dami ng bangka na sasama doon sa death procession, makikita yung social status ng namatay. Ayan. Tapos, ginagamit din po ang mga bangka sa wedding at saka sa mga festivities sa ibang part ng Philippines. Personally, nakakita po ko ng ganitong bangka sa Tawi-Tawi noong anniversary ng Sheikh Makdum Mosque. Ayan, yung mga festive na bangka. So, ayun, ipinapakita lang po dito na yung mga gamit sa sasakyang pandagat po ng Philippines ay nagmi-mirror din sa tradition at kulturang meron tayo noong unang panahon. Ayan. So, Jobs, ibalik ko sa iyo kung meron ka mang mga parting words.
Ayun. So actually, wala na. Pero masasabi ko lang na napakaganda talaga nung ibinahaging lektura ni Prof. Abera kasi maski ako nadagdagan yung kaalaman ko tungkol sa mga sinuuna nating bangka kasi makikita natin na 'di ba ang Pilipinas sa isang archipelago na napapalibutan ng katubigan. So sa pamamagitan din ng bangka nalaman natin na may iba't ibang terminolohiya na ginagamit dito. So ibig sabihin, talagang part ng pamumuhay ng mga sinuunang Pilipino ang bangka. Dahil nga sa ginagamit ito sa political na pangyayari, cultural, socio-economic background ng mga Pilipino at marami pang iba. So ngayon po, Dr. Abera, meron pa po ko yung nais sabihin bago po tayo magtapos.
Ma'am Mike po. Nakamute pa rin po, ma'am.
Okay. Lalo na doon po sa mga mag-aaral, gusto ko po na maging interesado sana kayo doon sa pamamaraan ng cultural history. So, para yung historical document ay madadagdagan natin sa ating pagbasa mula sa ating kultura.
Maraming salamat po. Yan. Magkita-kita po ulit tayo sa susunod na Countdown to 500 online lectures next month. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Pero bago tayo tuloy magtapos, may ilan po tayong mga pahabol na announcement. So, unang-una po, dahil extended till January 6 ang Quincentennial Art Competition at Lapu-Lapu National Monument Competition, inaanyayahan po natin lahat ng mga artists na magpasa po ng kanilang mga entries. Hanggang ngayon din po ay accessible na rin po sa NQC website ang Quincentennial Paper Doll. So pwede po natin itong ipamahagi sa ating mga kapatid, pamangkin, mga estudyante upang mas makilala nila ang ating mga ninuno kagaya nila Rahong Mabon, Lapu-Lapu at marami pang iba. Ninaanyayahan din namin ng mga musically inclined Filipinos na wag po tayo mahiyang magpasa po ng inyong song cover ng Bagani, ang theme song ng 2021 Quincentennial Commemorations. Lastly po, don't forget to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/NQC2021. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NQC2021. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, the National Quincentennial Committee, for more educational materials. Follow also our playlist on Spotify, 500 Years Philippines, to access the official soundtrack of the Quincentennial commemorations. Muli, maraming salamat po sa lahat. Alam.
Ayan, thank you po ulit, Dr. Abera. Thank you po sa lahat po ng attendees natin.
Sige, okay.
Mandirigmang Pilipino, dakilang lahi ko, bayaning Pilipino sa makabagong panahon.